Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Courtside View basketball webcast. This is Tribune sports editor Joe Waljasper along with Tribune basketball beat writer Steve Valentik. Steve, since last we spoke, Missouri began SEC play with what I guess you would have to call a Pyrrhic victory over Alabama, where they win the game and they lose Laurence Bowers to an MCL sprain. They follow that up by going to Mississippi and really never getting into the game at all and losing big down there. Let's talk about what this team is without Laurence Bowers, because he's definitely going to be out for the minimum of one more game, the Georgia game on Wednesday night, and then who knows how much longer after that. So what kind of team have we got here without Laurence Bowers?
Not nearly as potent of one, I think, and we definitely saw that on Saturday in Oxford. He really has been the guy since about maybe the fourth or fifth game of the season who's gotten them going in the first half. And he's done that consistently, where he has 8 points in the first 10 minutes most nights. And then you look at without him, the first time they had to play without him, they don't score for the first 6.5 minutes of the game, and they're in a 9-0 hole and just never could climb out of it because they couldn't generate anything consistently on the offensive end. I think it took 14 or 15 minutes before they had their first back-to-back possessions with baskets. It's hard to win that way. And I think what they lose without Laurence is not only a guy who's ready for that stage, who's been there before and doesn't have to settle into the game, he's ready to go. They miss their best inside presence. I think they also miss their best perimeter shooter if you look at the numbers. So it's difficult to replace all of that in one guy. Plus he's a valuable defender because of his versatility. He can block some shots. He's their second leading rebounder. So it's tough. I mean, they're a much different team without him. And I think early in the year, we saw Missouri struggle when Phil Pressey had to sit down, and it was really easy to say Phil Pressey's Missouri's most valuable player. And he is, but so is Laurence Bowers. And I think they're going to have to figure out different ways to make up for all of the different things that Laurence does.
Well, I think it's interesting because they have a lot of players who can have a good night on any given night. Ernest Ross can score a lot of points, or Jabari Brown can score a lot of points. Even just role players like Yankovic once in a while will have a big. But I think the one guy who's done it every night is Bowers. I mean, that even includes Phil Pressey. I think he was the one guy that's really hadn't had a bad game. So I think without him, you'll see a team that's really going to have some peaks and valleys for however long he's out. And when you're talking about MCL sprain, I know they're going to reevaluate him after a week, but I think realistically, we're probably talking about a couple weeks, as much as a month probably without him. Would that be your guess? I mean, Frank Haith had said we're not going to rush the guy back.
Certainly, I think it's a couple of weeks. I mean, I'm not in the shape that Laurence was, but I remember as a kid spraining my MCL, and your knee just doesn't feel right for a while. And he's been through rehab before. He's a pretty good healer. He's come back in great shape from a torn ACL, and he had a lot of time to recover from that. I think it's smart that they're not rushing him, because the worst thing they can do is have this be something that they push too quickly early, and it's still affecting him and thereby affecting the team in March when the games really matter. But they certainly need to get him back in as quickly a time frame as they can where he's ready to go. I don't know. It's I guess sort of fortunate that the schedule is such that you have two of the worst teams in the SEC coming to Columbia the next 2 weeks, Georgia and South Carolina, games that you'd think Missouri should be able to win without him. A tough road trip at Florida that was going to be tough to win with or without him. But when you start getting to some of those toss-up games, if they don't have him, that's when things really get tough.
I think when you look at the schedule, other than that Florida game, I think they could survive without him for a few weeks here. That's just the nature of the SEC. There's so many bad teams that I think you could probably get by without him. But I think you would definitely want to have him back by February, and then if you're going to have serious thoughts about competing for the league title. But beyond that, I think this is a team, they have the luxury of time, because I think Missouri's a team that's going to make the tournament, unless they completely bomb out in the conference season. But I think they're going to make the tournament, and you will see as they move along here in the next few weeks, if they're still in contention for a league title, then yeah, you want him to play. But if not, you want to make sure he's perfectly fine, so you've got the team you want going down the stretch.
Dangerous down the stretch. And to survive without him, what they need is they need Alex Oriaki to provide some sort of interior scoring presence that he's done some nights and certainly didn't against Ole Miss. They need Ernest Ross to be closer to the guy who had 19 points against Alabama in the SEC opener, not the guy who shot 1 for 7, scored 3 points at Ole Miss. I think they need a lot of guys to just raise their play a little bit, not have one guy. They don't have one guy who's capable of making up all that Laurence provides, but they need a lot of people pitching in. And I think this is one area where we see that this team's really not gotten a whole lot of production out of its freshman class to this point. And so we've talked about the depth of this team and how it's deeper than last year. It's not much deeper than last year's team because you have bodies that Frank Haith can put on the floor, but in terms of what he's going to get from them, he really doesn't know on a given night, and that's tough to coach with. And a lot of nights they don't give you very much, and they certainly didn't in Oxford.
I think the problem too with the offense is that he was really he obviously had good chemistry with Phil Pressey, but he's basically the only big guy who could catch the ball while moving and finish. You know, I don't think it's like Alex Oriaki, you're just not trying hard enough. I just think he can't catch the ball while moving, and it's just, I mean, it's not, that's just the way it is. And he's going to have to score off offensive rebounds. So I think you just no longer have that person at all. So you're going to have to, and that was the predominant part of their offense. So now you're just going to have to do it a different way. And the other factor is, at a time like this, you would like to be able to lean on your defense. And I think Missouri's defense is, if it was ever very good, which I'm not so sure it was, I think it was really early on, it looked better than it was because of the quality of competition. I don't think it's been very good at all since the last month or so.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Frank Haith can talk, and he did again on Saturday, about how he thought the defense was pretty good because Ole Miss shot 39%. But they had a lot of open shots that they missed. And teams have gotten open shots consistently on the Tigers this year. They're certainly not a swarming defensive team, a team that's contesting everything and making life tough to breathe on opponents.
And unlike the offense, I think that's something they can control. They are athletic enough to be good, and they're big enough to be good at defense.
I mean, they should be able to cover a lot of ground with their length, with their quickness. Really, with Phil Pressey is really their only small guy. Everybody else is a really good size and can cover a lot of ground. And Phil can cover a lot of ground just because he's so quick. But I don't think that they've been that sound guarding the ball. I don't think they're always sharp when it comes to rotating out and contesting shots.
And they're not rebounding like they were.
And they're not the same rebounding team, particularly without Bowers. But, I mean, they faced a solid front court in Ole Miss, but 3 games in a row they've been out-rebounded. And this was a team that was dominating people on the glass, out-rebounding them by 15, 20 rebounds a night. Bowers is obviously helpful to that, but he was only averaging 7 rebounds, so there's something else that's not happening there too.
All right. Well, tune in next week when we will look back on Missouri's game against Georgia and Florida and look ahead to the rest of the SEC schedule.